What's up, guys? It's Alexei Borov. This is going to be a deck profile for my chance deck, my gamble deck, whatever you want to call it. I actually have it titled Heart of the Cards because you're going to need some Heart of the Cards to help you win here. So first off, with the monster count, or the card count, there's 3 of Misjudge, 2 Honest, 3 Dice Jar, 3 Time Wizard, and that's it for the monsters. The spell cards are Cup of Ace, Dice Foon, Dangerous Machine Type 6, and the rest is trap cards. 2 Needle Stealing, 3 Fiend Comedian, 3 Dice Reroll, 3 Needle Wall, 3 Ridiculous, 3 Tour of Doom, and 3 Lucky Chance. Let me think here. Alright. I wanted to make sure Lucky Chance wasn't completely useless because I'm looking at this deck a week after I actually made it. So, what Misjudge does is, before resolving an opponent's card effect, toss a coin twice. If both are heads, negate the effect. You can use this once per turn. So what this means is, whenever your opponent activates a card effect, the first time, you have to activate this card. You flip 2 coins, and if they're both heads, negate that card effect. It's pretty hilarious if you have, I think if you have multiples on the field, only one goes off. I'm not entirely sure. But, I'll test that later and let you know. Too honest because I believe every monster is light, which is hilarious. They think chance is on their side, but no, we're cheating bastards. We have honest. Dice jar. Okay. Flip. When this card is flipped, both players roll a 6-sided die. The player with the lowest result takes damage equal to their opponent's roll times 500. If the winner rolled a 6, the losing player takes 6,000 damage. If the rolls are same, do it again. Ignore my voice, I have a chest cold for a while. So what this means is, let's say you roll a 1 and your opponent rolls a 6, you're taking 6,000 damage. If you roll a 1 and your opponent rolls a 5, you're taking 5 times 500, which is 2,500 damage. 2 of these could easily kill your opponent if luck is on your side. Time Wizard. Once per turn, toss a coin and call it. If you call it right, destroy all monsters your opponent controls. If you call it wrong, destroy all monsters you control and take shit tons of damage. So, again, Heart of the Cards type shit. You can actually use Time Wizard with Lucky Chance. And I didn't mention it, but you could also use Dice Reroll on Dice Jar. You can use Ridiculous on Dice Jar, and I'll get to that when I get to it. Cup of Ace. Toss a coin, heads, draw 2 cards, tails, your opponent draws 2 cards. Again, just some random luck. I've activated 3 of these in a row, and hey, my opponent went +6, so luck. Dice Foon, kind of like MST. Roll a 6-sided die. If the result is 2, 3, or 4, destroy 1 spell or trap card on the field. If it's a 5, destroy 2 spell or trap cards. But if it's a 1 or a 6, you take 1,000 damage. Pretty self-explanatory. Next is Dangerous Machine Type 6. During each of your standby phases, roll a 6-sided die. And these are the results. 1, you can discard a card, or you have to discard a card. 2, your opponent discards 1 card. 3, draw a card. 4, your opponent draws a card. 5, destroy 1 monster your opponent controls. Or 6, destroy this card. Now this also, I'll get to that later. I was going to say it works with Ridiculous, but I'll get to it later. Next is Needle Stealing. And there are 4 monsters on the field. Destroy all face-up monsters. Now the reason I use this is because Honest is never face-up on the field. Dice Jar is always set. This is probably going to die, so I don't care if it dies. And the same for Time Wizard if he's just sitting on the field. So if there's 4 more monsters on the field, flip this, destroy all face-up monsters. Your opponent's going to go a lot more minus than you are, and that's what matters. Fiend Comedian. Toss a coin and call it. If you call it correctly, you banish every card in your opponent's graveyard, long story short. But if you call it wrong, the number of cards that you would have banished, you mill from your deck. Milling from your deck really isn't that detrimental in this deck, but hey, it's all chance, and your opponent could lose their entire graveyard, which is pretty cool. Because a lot of decks these days require use from the graveyard, like Shadows and such, and all that good stuff. Dice reroll, pretty self-explanatory. 1 time during the rest of this turn, if either player rolls a die or dice, you can have that player re-roll. You can only gain this effect once per turn. You can activate this at the beginning of your turn, and then if you roll a die, like for example, Dice Jar, or Dangerous Machine, you could just do the re-roll, the entire roll. Pretty self-explanatory. Needle Wall, this is an awesome card. Once per turn, during your standby phase, roll a six-sided die. Treat your opponent's monster zones as numbers 1 through 5, counting from your right, and destroy the monster that is in the same monster card zone as the result. If it's 6, roll again. So, for example, if you roll a 3, destroy the middle card your opponent controls, or middle monster. It's pretty fun. If you have like 3 of these, oh, it's hilarious. Okay, Red Dicey. Each time a player rolls a die or dice, you can choose one result and apply the appropriate effect. 1, 3, or 5, make it a 6. 2, 4, or 6, make it a 1. I'll get to that in a second. Tour of Doom. During each of your standby phases, toss a coin. Heads, your opponent cannot normal summon or flip summon until the end of the turn. Tails, you cannot flip summon or normal summon during your next turn. Pretty great if you get it out turn 1 and you get some good luck with a bunch of heads. They do stack, so if you have 2 of them and one of them is tails and one of them is heads, your opponent is still screwed, but hey, they're screwed too, but hey, it's fun. They can't summon. Plus, it has an awesome picture. Next is Lucky Chance. It's a continuous continuous trap card, just like the last one. When an effect monster's effect activates that requires one coin toss, call heads or tails. If you call it right, draw a card. So pretty much the only use this has, I believe, is with Time Wizard. But still, it's a nice draw card if you get it right. You can probably change that out if you want. So what I was talking about with Ridiculous is if it's a 1, 3, or 5, you can make it a 6. And I believe this is once per turn? Nope, this is not once per turn. So if it's a 1, 3, or 5, you can make it a 6. If it's a 2, 4, or 6, you can make it a 1. Now that would work with Dice Jar. If you roll, for example, where is it? If you roll a 1, 3, or a 5, and you want to make your roll a 6, activate this card's effect, and boom, your roll's a 6. It's hilarious. You'll murder your opponent in no time. It works for Dangerous Machine Type 6, but you wouldn't really want to use that, because 1, you have to discard a card, and 6, you have to destroy a card. So no matter what, if you're going to have to re-roll this, you're going to have a bad time. I think that's all it works with. No, it also works with Needle Wall. You can roll a 1 or a 6. I believe that's all it works with. Yes, that's all it works with. So like I said, you can swap out some of these cards if you want, make it your own nice creation. You might want to take out Lucky Chance. I don't know why I put that in the deck. It's kind of terrible. Other than that, I might upload another example duel of this deck since I didn't upload a montage. It was just one single duel. Other than that, I'll see you guys around.